Is The Ghost and Mrs Muir my favorite movie of all time? No, but it is one of the greatest love stories of all time. Is it my favorite love story? Sometimes. There are all kinds of love stories. Love is a tricky thing, especially when set in Victorian England, where everything is so straight-laced. Mrs. Muir is a young widow and mother who rents a seaside cottage and is looking forward to making a new life for herself, a life of her own, away from her intrusive and overbearing relatives. Jean Tierney, whose ethereal beauty makes her a spectral presence in her own right, plays Mrs. Muir. The cottage she rents once belonged to a seaman named Captain Gregg, and when he's played by Rex Harrison in what is certainly his most charismatic performance, we look forward to every ghostly appearance. And thus begins one of the cinema's great romantic fantasies. But people of my generation probably saw the TV version first. Hope Lang is always welcome and always beautiful as Mrs. Muir. Who doesn't like Hope Lang? Her Mrs. Muir is the modern American woman, and she brings a mother's strength and determination to the part. British actor Edward Mulhare plays the ghost. He's tall and steadfast and just silly enough to smooth over a sailor's salty edges and not frighten the kids at home. I also noticed that he has a great tan. In the 90s, there was talk of a remake. Randa Haynes, the director of Wrestling Ernest Hemingway, a different kind of love story, was to helm the project, but it never got off the ground. But whether it's Jean Tierney or Hope Lang, this ghost has met his match, as all men do when falling in love. If he's lucky. And the ghost is not a bad role model either. As played by Rex Harrison in his best Bristol fashion, he exhibits many of the better manly virtues: strength, patience, understanding. And like real men everywhere, he doesn't have to fight anyone to prove it. Except maybe his own demons. A young Natalie Wood plays Mrs. Muir's daughter. Now there's someone who still haunts us. Robert Coote plays the panic-stricken realtor. He's an actor who shows up in many of my favorite films. He's Sergeant Higginbottom in Gunga Din, he's a ham actor in Douglas Fairbanks' The Exile, and he's an unwanted late-night visitor in The League of Gentlemen. Director Joseph Mankiewicz brings out the best in his cast, and Bernard Herrmann's score evokes the period. At first, the ghost tries to frighten Mrs. Muir away. He had dreams of turning Gold Cottage into a home for retired seamen. He eventually changes his mind, however, when he sees that she's made of sterner stuff. Pretty soon, however, Mrs. Muir's inherited investments fall short, and Captain Gregg comes up with the idea of writing a book in order to raise some money. It's while writing the book together that Mrs. Muir and the ghost fall in love. They know there's no future in it, but they take a comfort in it, as it staves off the loneliness of their existence. Later, when bringing the finished manuscript to a London publisher, Mrs. Muir momentarily loses her way by falling for that cad and bounder, George Sanders. George Sanders was always playing one of those guys. Even when he was the saint, he wasn't. Fortunately, Mrs. Muir soon discovers his true nature. The book is a smash success, and life returns to normal back at Gold Cottage. But Captain Gregg knows he's standing in the way of her happiness. And in a scene of heart-rendering beauty, one night while she's asleep, he leans down as if to kiss her and gently removes their time together from her memory. As the years go by, whatever memory she has of him is just a fantasy, an illusion brought on by a young widow's vulnerability. She's even a little embarrassed by it. And at the end, When she passes away, it all comes back to her in a radiant moment as her spirit rises to meet his in a scene that will leave even the stoniest of hearts weeping. See you around the campus.